All right. And again, it's good to see you this evening. We're in Daniel chapter 8. Just for your info, what I'm hoping to do is we'll finish the book of Daniel, hopefully by the end of May. But if we finish early, that's great. So whichever comes first, we finish Daniel or the last Thursday in May, we'll break for the summer and then pick up the first Thursday in September. So that gives us a break for the summer, and will let me kind of get ready for Revelation as well, because that's what we'll start when we come back. Again, Daniel and Revelation are companion studies. Really cannot understand one without the other, but especially the book of Revelation. We got to understand Daniel to really understand the book of Revelation. All right, so we're going to do something a little different right now. I want to give you all a pop quiz. All right, so let's see how well you do. Okay. All right, and again, you don't have to write anything down, just respond. Who or what is the fourth beast? The ugly one with the horns, that's right. Okay. The Antichrist. No. Wrong answer. The lion? No. The fourth beast. The fourth beast. The ugly one. Yeah. Yeah. What does that beast represent? Okay. Ancient Roman Empire is one idea. The fourth beast is a kingdom that is controlled by Satan. Okay? And again, there are some who would say what Chick just did, that is the revived Roman Empire. And there's some credibility for that. I mean, that's been a view that's been held by evangelical scholars for a long, long time. But there's also some that believe that it is the Roman Catholic Church is this kingdom or this beast that it's talking of. It's possible that it's either the Catholic Church, it's the revived Roman Empire, or it's possible, I think there is more credence to the idea today than there has been in a while, that it may be neither. It may not really be the revived Roman Empire, but it is an empire that rises and is controlled by Satan. And in real essence, it's a one world government. And so I think to make it simple, we really can't define it as a revived Roman Empire. We can't define it as the Catholic Church. What we can define it as is it is the one world government, because this beast rises out of the sea of humanity, and it represents that power that is controlling the world at that particular point in time. That makes sense to y'all? Yes. All right. So that is but remember, it is Satan controlled. So in essence, it's Satan himself. All right? So, next question. What do the 10 horns on the beast represent? All right, a 10-nation confederation. So there's 10 nations that actually form this one world government in its beginning. Daryl?
I think it's 10 areas represented filling those nations. It's not 10 nations, it's 10
Good.
areas.
Yeah, 10 geographical kingdoms. All right, and kingdom is a better term than nation for this, because it represents an area that is dominated or controlled by a king or a dictator or someone like that. So there's 10 geographical locations, 10 kingdoms, 10 dictators, if you would, that are controlling that are the catalyst of this one world government, this one world kingdom. All right, make sense? Right. So, let's see. Come on.
Eric, I think it's interesting because India and Pakistan are at each other's throats right now.
It's right.
And that could possibly be one of those areas
Mm-hmm.
in the future.
Very well could be. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of what's happening. And I'm froze up here for some reason. I can't advance. Okay. There we go. All right. So who or what does the little horn that rises on the beast represent? The Antichrist. So the Antichrist rises up out of this 10-nation confederation. So, again, have we seen that 10-nation confederation yet? No. Do we see possibly the precursors to it? Yeah, I think so. But again, we don't know who these 10 kingdoms are going to be, exactly what that's going to look like. And so it's hard for us to say that this is exactly what's going to happen. But we do know that that the Antichrist rises up from those 10 kingdoms, and he rises suddenly. He rises from ignominy. Is that a good word? I barely said it. But in other words, he's not well known. And he's not someone that is already on the scene necessarily. So popular political figures today, I think, would be excluded. Why? Because he comes out of nowhere and rises to power. So that's the little horn. Now, which three horns? It says that when he rises, that three horns will be plucked out of this 10-nation confederation. So which three horns does the little horn subdue? And he does subdue it. Check verse 24 of Daniel 7 says this: the 10 horns are 10 kings, and this is the interpretation that is given to Daniel, who shall arise from this kingdom. And another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. So this little horn, the Antichrist, is going to subdue 3 of the 10 kingdoms when he rises to power. Now, what does that mean exactly, do you think? I've got my own ideas here.
It means there's only 7 left.
It means there's 7 left. All right, he subdued 3, and so why would he have to subdue those 3, do you think?
I would think that's how.
Yeah, that's how he's going to conquer them. All right. Why would he want to conquer 3 of those 10 kingdoms?
Probably for what power they have.
What power they have, and probably because they're maybe not real pro-Antichrist. You know, they may be kind of anti-one world ruler.
Well, Gary, isn't there some indication that the kings of the East may not be part of that confederation?
It's possible.
They come in across the Euphrates River, right in.
That's very true. So some of the kings from the East, or kingdoms in the East, we know. I know Jordan today had made an announcement that they are not. What? Help me out, Anita. I haven't read the article. She read it to me on the way, and I've kind of forgotten. Okay, Jordan banned the Muslim Brotherhood. So they're withdrawing ties basically from the Muslim countries.
And they are pulling out away from all the countries that are, like they're pulling away from Iran, Iraq, all of those countries.
Right.
Right now they're standing to the side.
Right. Jordan's standing to the side. They're not really standing with Israel necessarily at this point, although they are on friendly terms to some degree. But, they have withdrawn from basically all the Muslim countries around and are standing off to the side. So Jordan's kind of out there in limbo. We don't have any idea who these 3 countries might be. But as I let my mind kind of go crazy today, what 3 countries, just in the geography that we know today, what 3 countries would be anti-one world ruler, one world government? America would be one. England would be another. China would be another.
The whole continent of Africa is enough people.
But would they be opposed to one world ruler? That would be the question, because they're not really united as a continent. I'm thinking Russia would be possibly a possibility.
Gary, the thing is, we're not looking at the world then like it is now.
That's right.
So it could be anything.
Exactly. So we really can't say the powers that be today are any of those three, although we feel like we are really, truly looking closely at the end times, and that time is at hand. So these are the ones that are in play. But that can change tomorrow. We know that too. And that's how rapidly things can change around here. Yes?
If I remember correctly, you believe that before Antichrist is recognized, we can see it and recognize him, we, the church, would be gone.
That's correct. So the church is going to be gone, but that's not one of the kingdoms that it's referring to. Right. So that's when that power, so when the power play starts, which is after the church is gone, then there's three kingdoms that are going to be subdued by Antichrist.
A lot of that could probably take place because it's going to be a chaotic.
Good point. You know, there is going to be chaos. And there are so many things, so many different directions we could go right now with this. It's amazing, but just worth thinking about and realizing that at that point in time, there's going to be turbulence. There is going to be a one world government come into place. And remember, the whole thing is orchestrated and controlled by Satan. All right? Satan is the controlling power and factor at that point. All right? So,
Could it have to be a nation? Could it be like the Fifth Empire, the news?
that's possible. I hadn't thought about that, Mike, but yeah, that's possible. That's a possibility. You know, I think, like you said, there's so many areas that we could go with that at this point. But as we go closer to the time, it may become more and more clear which ones those might possibly be. All right. Okay. Anyway, y'all did good on the quiz. You got A+. All right. All right. Let's go to Daniel chapter 8. And Daniel 8 relates another vision. And this vision is of the ram and the goat. Now, this chapter is a little easier for us to deal with because, for one, the angel Gabriel is going to come and explain this vision clearly to Daniel. The only issues we find, not issues so much, but as we really examine the chapter, we see a couple things. One is, there is what we believe is a near to Daniel, a near interpretation, and also a far interpretation of at least part of this chapter. So we'll get into that more as we go. The two kingdoms of chapter 8 are the same as two of the kingdoms of chapter 2. In the vision of the image that Daniel or that Nebuchadnezzar dreams, and Daniel interprets the vision or the dream for him. You know, there's 4 kingdoms represented, and on the statue or the image of a man with the head of gold, the breast of silver, the midsection of bronze, and then the legs of iron, and then the feet of iron and clay. Those represented kingdoms that would follow, and those have all been fulfilled, except for that final kingdom, which was the feet of iron and clay, which many believe is the revived Roman Empire. But that's the kingdom that we're talking about in chapter 7 with the beast. All right, so that's that kingdom. But the two kingdoms of chapter 8 are the kingdom of the chest of silver and the abdomen of gold. Not gold, bronze. Right? And so that's the two. And which two are those? Do you remember? The first one, the head of gold was what? Who? Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. The chest of silver is who? Medo-Persian Empire. Right? And it had because of the arms for one. And then the midsection was Greece. So the ram and the goat are dealing with the Medo-Persian Empire and Greece. Okay, so let's go ahead. So the vision described, and let's go ahead and read chapter 8, verses 1 to 14. And I'm sorry, I've got to use my Chromebook here in order to get that up. All right, now I'm going to be reading from the New King James Version. says, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar, need my glasses, King Belshazzar. All right, so it says the 3rd year. So it's 2 years after the vision of chapter 7, 2 years later. A vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time. I saw in the vision, and it so happened while I was looking, that I was in Shushan, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in the vision that I was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and there standing beside the river was a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that no animal could withstand him, nor was there any that could deliver from his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west, across the surface of the whole earth, without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the ram, and that ram had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram. He was moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled him, and there was no one that could deliver the ram from his hand. Therefore the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it, the 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars of the ground, and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down because of transgression. An army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all this and prospered. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, 2,300 days, or 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Okay, so y'all got that perfect, right? No issues. All right. All right. Very involved. So let's kind of go through it a little bit at a time and see what we get. So I said that, first of all, it was in the 3rd year of Belshazzar. So that's 2 years after the previous vision. King Belshazzar ruled in what kingdom? Babylon. I remember he was a grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. A couple times down the way there. All right. So it was during this time of Belshazzar, still ruling in Babylon. So everything that Daniel is seeing about the ram and the goat is all future. Has not happened yet. Okay? Now, there is, in the world of people who want to disprove the Bible, there are a lot of folks that want to try to disprove Daniel, because if you disprove Daniel, and that it can actually put a writing for Daniel later than his lifetime. In other words, somebody wrote Daniel and put his name on it, and they did it after all these other events happened. Then all you've got is simply somebody who reported what happened, and it was instead of it being prophetic in nature. But there's too much evidence and proof that Daniel is the author, and he wrote it during his time as I've lost my term, second in command of Babylon, basically. All right? And one of those has to do with this chapter and the overthrow of Greece by the Maccabees. That happened in 168 BC. And in one of the books of the Apocrypha, Judas Maccabees, Maccabee quotes the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So it had been written before Maccabee, and that was 168 BC. And that's when people try to say that Daniel was written, was around in the 2nd century BC. All right? Now, what does all that mean? Well, that means we've got evidence that it was written prior to that. Because how could Maccabee quote that if it hadn't already been written? Okay? So, we've got here, and that's just one of many, but we'll talk more about that as we get to a fellow by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes. All right? So, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the first one appeared. All right? And it says, I saw in the vision, and it was so happened that while I was looking, that I was in Shushan. Does that ring the bells? The citadel, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw the vision that I was by the river Ulai. Okay, what in the world, where in the world, what are we talking about? Well, all right, so here's a map of the Medo-Persian Empire, and we have in the middle here, can you see, let me see if I can highlight it here.
Gary, I read somewhere that Elam was the summer castle of the Babylonian Empire.
This is true. So that is correct. The Shushan and the kingdom of Elam actually was kind of a vacation spot for Nebuchadnezzar's father, okay, as well as Nebuchadnezzar and some others. So if you see my pointer there, this is Elam right here. Susa is right here under the name Elam. Of course, Babylonia here's on the left of the screen. The Persian Gulf is to the south. So what would be way over to that side of the screen? What's going to be way over there? Israel and the Mediterranean Sea. Okay? All right. And so what is Susan or Susa is what? Well, y'all remember a little book in the Bible by the name of Esther? Where was Esther? She was in Shushan, right? And her husband Ahasuerus was king, and so the whole story of Esther happens in Elam and Susa, which is this is the area there that Daniel is envisioning and he sees, and he's by the river Ulai. Now that is not one of the major rivers like the Tigris and the Euphrates and so forth, but it's a small river that kind of runs up this direction from Susa, right here. So it's a little river like so. But all that means is that this was a very fertile area, and this was, as you said, a vacation spot for the most part. But it was also a citadel. It was reinforced. And so it was a very strong, it was a stronghold at that time as well. So here's Daniel. He's got this vision. It's in Shushan. The significance, I think, is really this, that he's now not seeing the kingdom of Babylon. He is seeing what's going to happen in the future. He's seeing what's already taken place as far as the Medo-Persian Empire is concerned. All right? So he's seeing what's happened as a result of the Medes and the Persians overwhelming and overtaking the kingdom of Babylonia. All right? So the two horns, two-horned ram, says the horns were high. One was higher than the other. The ram pushed westward, northward, and southward. It's interesting. It didn't go what direction? It was northward. West, north, south, and east. Okay. He didn't go east. Well, let's go back here. What was east? What's east? No, Israel's the other way. East. On this map, east would be this way. What's east? India? China? Russia would be north. Northwest, actually. Okay. So the east of Susa or Elam would actually be China, India, those Asian countries. Vietnam, Korea, those. All right. It's interesting you didn't go beyond that. What do you think that is?
They didn't know what was beyond that.
Well, they didn't know. Plus, the Chinese Empire has been around for a long time. 5,000 years. All right? And so this was a very strong kingdom to begin with. So, and this, this would have been fighting the Mongols, Genghis Khan, and that group, and nobody really wanted to go up against these people. So I think it's pretty obvious the reason they didn't go any further east is they didn't want to tangle with this group of folks. And that just makes sense to me too. And so we've got then this kingdom, Medo-Persians, that pushed westward, northward, and southward. They became great, and none could withstand them. All right? So we know that the Medo-Persian Empire took over what was once the Babylonian Empire. And it was really divided into two segments, the western segment and the eastern segment. The Medes and the Persians. Persia being the largest and strongest of the two divisions.
And remember that the Persian, under that name that I can't pronounce, took on Greece.
Yes.
At the 300 and Macedonia and all of that.
Right.
They took them on.
Right.
And were defeated, pushed
Yes.
back,
Right.
at least from Greece at that time.
That's right. And remember, Greece is the goat.
Yes.
Okay? And so it says that, again, the Medo-Persians, there were two horns. One horn was greater than the other horn. And most scholars believe that is a reference to the fact that the Persian segment of the Medo-Persian Empire was greater than the Mede portion of that empire. Does that make sense? Okay. All right.
We're talking about Xerxes and Darius.
Pardon?
We're talking about Xerxes and Darius that attacked the Greeks.
Yes. Yes. Artaxerxes attacked the Greeks and lost. Well, why did they attack the Greeks? Because the Greeks were coming. And we'll talk more about those folks in a second. All right? So let's look at this one-horned male goat in verse 5. It says the same, he came suddenly from the west. Again, so this is the two-horned ram was Medo-Persian Empire. All right? Now we've moved on to the one-horned male goat. And he came suddenly from the west. What's west again? Well, yeah, Mediterranean, Israel, Mediterranean Sea, Turkey, Greece, on in toward the Aegean Sea. All right. So it comes in suddenly from the west, not touching the ground. That's really interesting. That is a reference to the speed in which it happened. It happened quickly.
Did that during World War II.
Pardon? Yeah. The faster an army can move, the more destructive they can be. That's right. And that's what happened here. That's what happened with Alexander the Great, is that he moved so rapidly and conquered so quickly that they couldn't build up the defenses to overwhelm him in return. All right? It says, with a notable horn between his eyes. All right? The goat defeats the ram. With furious power, the goat attacked the ram and he broke his two horns. So that made what defense mechanism does a ram have? His horns. If he doesn't have his horns, he's defenseless. Right? It's kind of like having a gun with no bullets. At that point, it's just a club. A ram that has no horns has no defense. And so with the horns broken off by the goat, then the ram was defenseless, right? So the ram was trampled underfoot of the goat, right? The goat became great, but then his horn is broken.
He died.
That's right. Alexander the Great died at age 33, suddenly. Right? So he was considered. By the way, he didn't call himself Alexander the Great. That happened later. But Alexander the Great, obviously, he moved. He formed a huge army. He moved quickly. He invaded the Medo-Persians, and he captured all their property, all their lands. He destroyed them, and then Greece became the ruling power under Alexander the Great. But then he died at age 33. The large horn was broken. Right? And then it says 4 notable ones came up in his place. All right, so Alexander, because it happened so suddenly, he did not appoint a successor to follow him. He wasn't expecting to die at age 33.
There's theory that he was poisoned.
What's that?
I read somewhere that they think he was poisoned.
Yes, I've heard that. Some believe he was poisoned. That's very possible. Possibly he got some sort of an illness that worked very quickly. We don't know exactly why he died. We just know he did die at age 33, and he had not left, in essence, a will. He had not appointed someone to take over in his place. And so that left the kingdom in disarray. And so 4 of his generals took over. The 4 notable horns arose. All right? And they took 4 different areas. So here's kind of an image of that to kind of get that in your mind. And it says that out of one of them grew a little horn, which grew exceedingly great, toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. Now, so it became exceedingly great toward the south and east, and toward the glorious land. What is the glorious land? Israel. And so, again, we have that division taking place of the Medo-Persian Empire among these generals. Okay? And then it says that he exalted himself. So Alexander the Great exalted himself. And the horn, the fact that what Alexander the Great accomplished in so little time has really not been duplicated in the world since. It really is amazing everything that Alexander the Great did. So that's kind of the history, the story. So by this powerful horn, it says the daily sacrifices were taken away. All right? So what's going to happen there? Got to have a temple. Okay? So was there a temple in Jerusalem during the Grecian times?
Yes, there were.
Yeah?
Yeah, because of the Maccabees.
Because the Maccabees actually took it back.
Yes.
But it wasn't where the temple's supposed to be.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was a rebuilding or remodeling of Solomon's temple. Pardon?
Rome hadn't destroyed it yet.
Right. Rome had not destroyed it yet. Remember, again, going back in, you remember a fellow by the name of Nehemiah? All right. You remember a fellow by the name of Ezra? Okay. While they were in captivity to Babylon, they spent 70 years. At the end of that, Medo-Persians came in, and Cyrus, who was the king, kind of looked favorably on the Jews, and he allowed Ezra to go back into Israel, and an effort was made at that point to rebuild the temple. So Zerubbabel rebuilt the temple. Now, it wasn't as glorious as Solomon's temple. Nowhere near. But it was a temple. And it had everything in it except it did not have the Ark of the Covenant. Because that was gone. All right, it was hidden away. Darrell?
Even though the king took upon himself through God's leadership to let the Jews go back to did not all have to go,
That's right.
but they were let go.
Right. At that point, it was allowable for any Jew in Babylon to travel back to Jerusalem, to Israel, if they wanted to. But over 70 years, their life in Babylon hadn't been that bad, folks. And so many of them had adapted to that, and they had a life and they stayed. They served their tour.
It is said that Alexander the Great did go to Jerusalem, and that he was told the story of Xerxes or Cyrus.
Right.
And because of Daniel, Alexander the Great gave a reprieve
Yes.
to Jerusalem and went on towards Egypt.
Exactly. So early on in the Greek control of the world, Alexander the Great and some of those who followed him favored the Jews.
Yes.
And were very, very much lenient as well as supported, the Jews, and were very allowing of Jewish worship, of what was going on in Israel. And so there was a temple, and it was being utilized at that particular point. But then a fellow comes on the scene by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay? And it's Antiochus that changes the whole thing. And so we're going to get there in just a moment, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. All right? But the prophecy here is that it says the daily sacrifices were going to be taken away. So they were sacrificing in the temple. And so there's this near prophecy now that is taking place. Again, when Daniel is writing this, there is no temple in Jerusalem. It's been destroyed. And so there is now this concept that sacrifices are reinstituted. And remember, folks, they can't sacrifice if there's no temple. So there had to be a temple in Jerusalem for the sacrifices to be taken away. Make sense? Daryl?
Their first job in going back to Israel was to build a wall.
That's right.
Then the temple.
And that's Nehemiah.
That's right.
All right. So Nehemiah built the wall. Zerubbabel built the temple. Okay? All right. So daily sacrifices were going to be taken away by this powerful horn. All right? The place of God's sanctuary was cast down, which was the Holy of Holies. All right? Daily sacrifices were opposed. All right? So, now we have a conversation that takes place in verses 13 and 14. It says, of the holy ones speaking. Anybody have a different translation than holy one? The old King James says saints. Okay? Anybody have a different translation?
Mine just says two holy ones.
It says what?
Two holy ones.
Two holy ones. So it says in verse 13, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. All right, so I'm not going to get with that right now. I want to just establish one thing, and that is there was a temple for this to happen. There had to be a temple in place for this, the daily sacrifices to be opposed, the holy place to be cast down, and again, we have a vision here of a destruction or a forceful prohibition of Jewish worship. I think is probably the best way to say that. There's a forceful prohibition of Jewish worship. Yes?
Is there some problem or some issue with this chapter in verse, I think it's 12, and it became great, even as great as the prince of the host.
The prince of the hosts.
That's in chapter 8, verses...
Right. 11 and 12. Yeah. Yeah. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice were taken. So what does that mean exactly? What did he declare? He declared himself to be equal with God. That's what that means. And so what do we got a picture of here? We've got a picture of this great king, this great horn, coming in to the temple, stopping the worship, prohibiting the worship, prohibiting the sacrifices, basically establishing himself to be God and demanding worship. Now, we look forward and say, that's Antichrist, right?
Was that not Epiphanes?
Pardon?
Was that not Epiphanes?
But yes, that was Antiochus Epiphanes. What we have is the near and the far. Okay? The near fulfillment of this passage is when Antiochus Epiphanes, who came into power after Alexander the Great. I'm not going to go through all the history of it. There's just too much there. But about 4 kings removed from Alexander the Great, Antiochus Epiphanes, a Seleucid king, came into power. He did not like the Jews. He was anti-Semite. And he came in to stop the Jews in their tracks, to stop their worship, and to destroy them and destroy Jerusalem. That's when we have the war that took place in the time in between the Testaments, the closing of Malachi and the opening of Matthew, what's called the Apocrypha, and the Maccabees. So that war with the Maccabees was the Maccabees revolting against Antiochus Epiphanes because he desecrated the temple. Okay? All right, y'all with me so far? It gets a little complicated, so I'm trying to keep it in order. All right. So, the vision interpreted. Now we've got an angel coming to tell Daniel what this vision represents. So let's read that real quickly. All right, so verse 15. It says, Then it happened, when I, Daniel, had seen the vision and was seeking the meeting, that suddenly there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai who called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. Now, who's Gabriel? He's an archangel. Where else do we see Gabriel? Where? Where do we see Gabriel? He was sent to Daniel to answer his prayers. All right. We also see him somewhere else. Mary. It was Gabriel that came and made the announcement to Mary. Okay? So we don't see Gabriel as a messenger angel, although that's kind of a contradiction of terms because the word angel simply means messenger. But he is the one who comes bringing announcements and interpreting visions and dreams. All right? So it's Gabriel. Make the man understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid, and I fell on my face. But he said to me, Understand, Son of Man, that the vision refers to the time of the end. So underline that. So now we've got a key that tells us that this vision is going to be a reference to what's going to take place in the end days. So there's going to be potentially, and the context supports it, a near fulfillment and a far fulfillment. Something's going to happen fairly quickly soon after Daniel, but there's going to be something way on in the future, which will be the end of days. All right. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep with my face to the ground, but he touched me and stood me upright. And he said, Look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the latter time of the indignation. For at the appointed time, the end shall be. The ram which you saw having the 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. So he tells exactly who it's going to be. I mean, they're named. So there can be no question about that. The ram was Media, Persia, right? The the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. So we've got, again, God naming exactly who this is going to be. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. Who was the first king of Greece? Alexander. Very good. As for the broken horn and the four that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but it won't have the same power that it had with Alexander. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king, it doesn't name him, it doesn't name this king. That seems interesting. The narrative changes a little bit. We're giving the specific names, Medo-Persian, we're giving Greece, we are confident who the first king is, but then it says that there's, toward the end, there's going to be a king that will arise, a king. So we're not given a name here. All right? Having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. In other words, he's going to be mighty, but it's not going to be his own strength. That power is going to be coming from another source, who is Satan. All right? He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty, and also the holy people. Through the cunning, he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes. Who's the prince of princes? God himself. All right? But he shall be broken. Now underline this last phrase. Without human means. In other words, he's not going to be defeated by man. He's going to be defeated by God. All right? So hang on, folks, because this is where this gets a little tricky to understand. And the vision of the evenings and the mornings which was told is true. Therefore, seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick for days afterward. I arose and went out about the king's business. I was astonished by the vision, but no one understood it. All right? So at that point, they didn't know what was. Daniel did not understand what he was writing. He was just reporting. So now we can go back and piece things together. So let's look at this interpretation. All right? So Gabriel was sent to explain the vision. A voice from the banks of the Ulai instructed Gabriel to explain it. Gabriel comes near, and Daniel falls on his face in fear. Fear is one of the responses that everybody had when an angel appeared. What did the angel Gabriel say? Well, the first words out of his mouth when he appeared to Mary. Fear not. Don't be afraid. All right? It would have been, folks, I think I would have kind of been a little fearful at that point. That's right. And it's not just a man. This is an image of an angel. And so, yeah, that's going to be freaky. And so whenever an angel appeared, it seemed like there was always that preface, fear not, fear not. All right? So Gabriel comes near Daniel and falls on his face in fear. Daniel is told to stand on his feet. In other words, you don't receive this interpretation laying down. You got to be on your feet. All right. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid. I fell on my face. He said to me, understand, son of man, that the vision refers to the time of the end. So what does that tell us real quickly? That this vision is for the future. And not only for the future, but it's going to be the end. Yeah, it's for the end times. And so it's got to reach far into the future. So anything that would happen before the end happens can be similar, but it's not the same thing. Okay? Now that's important to hang on to. If this is for the end times and the end hasn't happened. Now folks, how do we know the end hasn't happened? There you go. Look around. You're here. All right? Very simple. The end hasn't happened yet. So we can have a lot of things that look similar in events that take place that are very similar to what is being prophesied, but those things that happen are not the end. That hasn't happened yet. So there's something still far-reaching in the future. Right? So hang on. All right. So the two-horned ram equals the kings of the Medo-Persian kingdom. We saw that already. The larger horn represents Persia, which was the greater influence. All right, we saw that. The expansion of the kingdoms, illustrated by pushing westward, northward, and southward. We've seen all that. That's the Medo-Persian Empire right here. So you see the territory that it covered. Very expansive. But it does not cover Greece, which would be right here. All right. So again, this is the Mediterranean Sea right across here. This would be Israel right here. All right. And of course, this is Greece. And so everything in yellow here would be the Medo-Persian Empire. It was Alexander, when Alexander conquered, he conquered the Medo-Persian Empire. All right. So the one-horned male goat represents the kingdom of Greece, came out of the west. Large horn, his first king was Alexander the Great. And this is the image of Alexander the Great's kingdom. Now, how different is it from the Medo-Persian Empire? Not very different. Pretty much the same. The major difference is it includes Greece. So Greece and then all the rest of the Medo-Persian Empire is what you have pictured here. All right? And so Alexander took all of that. He took it very rapidly. Remember, he didn't have jets, tanks, airplanes. So everything was done on foot and by horse and elephants. And so they moved quickly considering what was happening, and they were able to conquer all this territory in a very, very short period of time. You know, that is amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right. So the speed of the goat agrees with Alexander's conquests. You know, in fact, it didn't touch the ground. That's the rapid movement. Okay. The broken horn and 4 horns. Alexander died at age 33. His empire divided between his 4 generals. The little horn, verse 23, the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressions are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences will stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy, also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. The idea there is witchcraft. All right. And he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace, in other words, he's going to be pretty proud of himself, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. Now, near fulfillment refers to what happened under the king Antiochus Epiphanes, who was the ruler of Syria, and he was an Antichrist, not the Antichrist. So we're going to be doing some comparison here to see how they differ. I want to read something that Amir wrote in his book that I thought was very, very good. It says, remember, prophecies often have a near view and a far view. The first part of Daniel's vision had only an early fulfillment. In other words, the Medo-Persian part. This is why Gabriel could be so succinct in his interpretation. The ram is Medo-Persia, and the goat is Greece. Not much wiggle room here. But in verse 23, the style of the narrative changes. Rather than giving us a name, Gabriel speaks of a king. Instead of providing a date, he only says in the latter time. This generally opens the door for us to look for dual fulfillment. But we are careful in doing so. We can only ascribe to this or any other prophecy a near and a far fulfillment if the wider context of Scripture backs us up. And in this case, it most definitely does. All right, so we'll move on. So when Antiochus conquered Jerusalem, he set up an image in the temple. This happened around in the 2nd century BC. He set up an image in the temple. We know that from history. He offered swine or pig flesh on the altar. He forbade circumcision. He forbade keeping of the Sabbath, and he forbade any Jew having a copy of the Scriptures. Now, that sounds like Antichrist. Right? And so he certainly is an Antichrist. But I think we've got to compare Antiochus Epiphanes with our understanding of who the Antichrist is. And I think this will become clear that even though Antiochus was an Antichrist, he wasn't the Antichrist. And obviously, things did not end after Antiochus destroyed the temple, destroyed their worship. He didn't really destroy it. He plundered it. Okay? And it was restored by Herod after it was regained by Judas Maccabees. Yes.
The fact that we live where we live now,
Yes.
with what's behind us, and what we have been told for the future in Revelation,
Yes.
this is right on track.
It's right on track. It's right on track. And as we look at what Antichrist is going to do, we see that preparation being made. All right. So let's do a comparison. The king of fierce countenance is the Antichrist. We know that. Not Antiochus Epiphanes. But if you compare verses 23 through 27 with verses 9 through 14, you'll see that the characteristics and career of Antiochus parallel those of Antichrist. So let's look at how they parallel and then how they differ. Both begin modestly, but increase in power and influence. Now we know Antiochus kind of arose from nowhere. All right? He began modestly, and he increased in power and influence. We know the Antichrist, the little horn of the beast of Daniel 7, is going to rise up from nowhere and come into power and gain great influence. All right? So great similarities there. Number 2, they both blaspheme God with mouths that speak great things. Antiochus came in, declaring himself to be God, demanding their worship. And he blasphemed God. The Antichrist is going to do that as well. Both persecute the Jewish people. Now here's where we have a difference. Antiochus was anti-Semite. He was anti-Jewish. But we know the Antichrist from Revelation also persecutes not only the Jews, but who else? Christians. So that means just right there we can say Antiochus was not completely fulfilled in Antiochus Epiphanes. There's a far fulfillment, which is the Antichrist, because the Antichrist persecutes Christians as well as Jews. All right, make sense? All right. All right, number 4. All right, both claim to be gods and put images in the temple. The Antichrist prophet causes the image to speak. We don't have that in Antiochus. He goes into the temple himself and declares himself. Okay? Where the Antichrist, the prophet sets up an image and causes the image to speak. Now, folks, I wish I knew what that meant. Rick and I were talking about this the other day.
I saw when I was a kid in Disneyland, a combination of Abraham Lincoln.
Oh yeah, the Hall of Presidents in Disneyland. Yeah. Audio animatronics. Yeah. And that's what Rick and I were talking about earlier is, to us, that doesn't seem like a big deal. All you got to do is get Jim Henson and the Muppets in there. Right? And you got it. So I don't know exactly, for us, that's not a huge impact. But as Daniel saw it, that would be a pretty big deal. Remember, Daniel's simply reporting what he saw. And he saw the image of the beast speak. Now, folks, back then, statues didn't talk. Images didn't speak. We see that all the time. So whether it has a different meaning for you and I don't know for sure. But this is what is called the abomination of desolation. Now, here again is where we can confirm the far fulfillment. Because Jesus said in Matthew 24:15 that when you see the abomination of desolation, as was spoken of in the prophet Daniel. Now, folks, when was Jesus alive compared to Antiochus Epiphanes?
Say the question again.
When was Jesus alive in relation to Antiochus Epiphanes?
Not on earth.
Well, at least 200 years. Yeah. Antiochus, about the 2nd century BC. Okay, that makes sense. I probably didn't phrase that question real well. All right. Antiochus Epiphanes lived in 2nd century BC. Jesus in the 1st century AD. All right. And so Antiochus was long dead. But Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation in the temple as spoken of in the prophet Daniel, look out, because, the time is at hand. So what's that tell us real quickly? Antiochus wasn't the fulfillment. Right? There is a fulfillment in the future. All right? The far fulfillment. The what?
He was bad, but he wasn't the worst.
Very good. He was bad, but he wasn't the worst. The Antichrist is going to make him look like a little kid in the park.
I just have a thought that, it seems like right now, it may be in its infancy, but the technology to create the abomination of desolation may exist right now.
Yeah.
What could it be? I was sitting here thinking, could it be a hologram? Could it be projected from satellites in space or something like that?
Yeah. Or,
I don't know what it's going to be, but
yeah.
whatever Daniel saw,
Yeah.
he thought it was real.
That's right. Could it be a robot? Could it be an AI? Could it be a puppet? Whatever. But whatever it is, it has that ability to speak that is given. For us, again, we can see how that happens where Daniel could not have seen. There's so many things in Scripture that we can understand now because we see the technology that is available for it to happen. But when it was written, it couldn't. Let me give you an example. We know about the 2 witnesses in the book of Revelation.
It'd be like the Wizard and the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. The 2 witnesses are going to be killed. They're going to be laid into the streets, and it says the whole world will see them for 3 days. Well, folks, 40 years ago, we asked ourselves the question, how could that be? How could the entire world see these people in state in 3 days? I'm from Vietnam era. Many of you guys are. And if you'll remember, when we got our news reports concerning Vietnam, we didn't get them in 1 or 2 days. Usually they were 30 days old by the time we got them. Why? Because it took that long to get the film processed, the film developed, get everything sent back to the States. That's kind of just how long it took. Right. But then a few years later, in the 80s, we sat and we witnessed on our own television sets the bombing of Baghdad in real time. Folks, automatically we've got the means through which these 2 witnesses can be viewed by the world in 3 days. Folks, and now you've got your phone, and you can see it live, and if you don't believe me, just look up the Pope right now and see what's going on with the Pope. Everybody's seeing the Pope lay in state, and I'm not saying he's anything to do with any of this, okay? But just an example, right? And so, we've got the technology, as Rich is saying, to do some of these things that Daniel probably couldn't have understood. And it's going to rain in 15 minutes. That's right. Okay, I'll be done by then. All right. Both claim to be gods. Both impose their own religion on the people. So we know the Antichrist we know Antiochus imposed his religion on the people of Israel. We know the Antichrist is going to form a one world government. All right. And by the way, I need to go back to the first one. Both claim to be gods and put images in the temple. What does that mean for us right now? There's going to have to be a temple. Right? And you've heard me say all you got to do is to go to templeinstitute.org and you will see the plans for the temple. In fact, next week, if I remember, I will play a video that they made of their anticipation of the coming temple. And they say this, the time is at hand. The children are ready is the name of the video. Okay? And so I'll try to show that next week. All right? All right. Both are opposed by a believing remnant that knows God. Antiochus was opposed by the Maccabees. Antichrist by the believing Jews of the tribulation. All right? I'm trying to hurry up. I'm over time. Both are energized by the devil and are great deceivers. Both appear to succeed marvelously and seem to be invincible. Both are finally defeated by the coming of a Redeemer. Now, Antiochus was defeated by a man. Okay? Judas Maccabees. But the Antichrist, we saw it says that this Antichrist will not be destroyed by human hands, but by the power of God. So the Antichrist will be destroyed by the God-man, Jesus the Messiah. All right? Phew. All right. Yes, yeah. It's okay to say hallelujah, praise the Lord at this point. And so we really got to stop here because I'm over time. But folks, what I want us to really get as a takeaway tonight, there's several lessons I want us to see, and we'll get them next week. But the takeaway tonight is simply this, that God, when He gave this vision to Daniel, we've seen many minor fulfillments of this man Antichrist come into the world today. Antiochus Epiphanes was one. Hitler is another. Although the temple wasn't there, so obviously it can't be quite exactly the same. But these were simply precursors, letting us see how bad it can be, or was. But folks, it's not even close to how bad it's going to be when the Antichrist comes into power. Now, why do we need to know this?
Tell our kids and grandkids and whoever else will listen.
It's meant, folks, we're not going to be here when all this takes place. I still believe 100% church is going to be gone. So if we're going to be gone, why does it matter? Because it matters because some of the people we love are going to be left behind. And we've got to do what we can at this point in time to help them understand the danger that they're in. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. And I already know I've got family members I'm not going to be able to reach. So what I've got to do is pray. That's all I can do at this point. Folks, I've got a brother. I know right now there's no way in the world I can lead him to the Lord. We are estranged, and there's just no way I'm going to be able to lead him to the Lord. I've tried in the past. He's rejected that. If he's going to come to Jesus, it's going to be because somebody else comes. And so I pray every day that somebody will come that he will listen to and will lead him to the Lord. And folks, sometimes that's what has to be done. Sometimes we can actually carry the message ourselves. But folks, it's an important message. The time is at hand, and those who don't know Jesus are going to die in their sins and spend eternity separated from God. All right, let's quit there. Wanda's going to come lead us.